You are listening to Been There, Done That. We present some of the smartest people connected to the business of coffee. People who've succeeded in the tough grind of hospitality by staying ahead of the rest. So join us as we explore the secrets to their success and help you accelerate your business. This show is brought to you by the Coffee Commune, where the coffee community comes to collaborate. Enjoy the show.
Hi there, it's Phillip Di Bella and listening to another episode of Been There and Done That, brought to you by the Coffee Commune, where we bring amazing people onto the show that have been there and done that. Today we're going to talk something that you might not find sexy, but by the end of it you will find very important, and that is insurance. And for all of our insurance needs here at the Coffee Commune, we highly recommend the team at Stellar Insurance Brokerage. We use them, our clients use them, they do a great job. And today I have Karla Vosloo, who is their account manager at Stellar. Karla, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let me give you a little bit of background. Karla is a very dynamic person. She's a great communicator. She thrives on building strong and lasting relationships with clients and underwriters alike. She's in the business of helping her clients. She works obviously at Stellar Insurance Brokers. And they're delivering expert insurance solutions with a personal touch, something we don't often see in professional services. And as I said, we get to experience this firsthand. So Karla was originally from Australia, went over to New Zealand, sounds like a Kiwi. Yep, we won't hold that against you. We love the Kiwis. Has come back and joined the team last year at Stellar, and she's bringing her expertise and a deep passion for helping small businesses, which obviously aligns very closely with myself and my team at the Coffee Commune, where we want to make sure that we're helping micro, small and medium businesses accelerate their potential. So Karla, today we're going to talk all things insurance. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for the wonderful job you guys do, not only for the Coffee Commune, but also for our members and our community, which is always appreciated. So, give us a bit of background. I want to explore where have we come from insurance? Let's just say 5 years ago, let's talk pre-COVID is a lot of time we obviously talk about now. So what did insurance look like in pre-COVID and what does it look like now? And then we'll segue into what it's going to look like in the future. But what was it pre-COVID and then the journey to now?
So I would say pre-COVID, it's probably a bit more relaxed, particularly in terms of, legislation, all that sort of boring stuff that's been brought in, but does impact sort of what we're doing behind the scenes. Also, during COVID, we did notice a sort of a higher awareness coming to clients about their insurance, with COVID shutdowns, how that was impacting people. So I think probably the outcome of COVID is that everyone is taking a much closer look at their insurance and really reviewing particularly premiums, things like that with business closures. And then also sort of before COVID, we would see a bit of a relaxed approach from insurers where it would be more inclined to call up an insurer and say, hi, I've got, a cafe business. I'm looking for insurance for this. What sort of price are we looking at? And so on. Whereas now we are seeing a bit of tightening following the impacts of COVID to the economy. All those sort of things have a carry-on effect through. But generally speaking, while it did impact how insurance is done, historically, insurance has always been your premium for product, and that never really changes.
Yeah. And it's fair to say that obviously, different moments in time and different moments in a journey of a life cycle, certain things happen that affect things. Like obviously I wasn't around, but World War I would have changed things. World War II would have changed things. And let's not call, the COVID a war, but in saying that, it was a real change in moment in time, where interesting, the key takeaway for me there is that prior to COVID, it was just something you did. It was emotion. You went about it. The broker did what you needed to. Fast forward to now, and because of the premiums rising every year, and we'll get onto that after, and the requirements and the claims, and it made people look at their insurance policies a lot closer, right?
Yes.
So for everybody listening right now, what I really want you to be across is that, energy prices, so utilities in terms of gas and electricity have been the focus of increases in the last 3 and 4 years, and people have been speaking about that. We're looking at, say, 20 to 30% year-on-year increase in costs of gas and electricity. But let's just say it the way it is. Insurance is the next problem. Our house insurance, as you know,
yes,
went up 25% the last 12 months, and our business insurance stuff went up 24% in the last 12 months. And so this is a very important topic that listeners need to be across. Get your policies out, have a look at them, make sure you're dealing with a good broker, somebody that really is, experienced in looking at your what you're covered for and what you're not. But to me, and there's a question coming here, is the broker is matching your needs. So let's talk some of the insurance stuff, and I'm going to leave this as an open forum to yourself. Let's use Cyclone Alfred as an example. Right?
Yes.
So I'll let you take the floor, and on the back of what I said, people grabbing their policies and having a look at them. Let's use Cyclone Alfred as a work in progress. What are the things that people need to be across?
Yeah, so look, just generally speaking, weather events have had a huge impact on insurance. So, we obviously have within Australia and sort of surrounding countries, significant weather events occurring more frequently. They're causing more significant loss every time. So, we're talking in the billions and billions now. And those costs have to be borne by policyholders eventually. So, insurer one has an insurer that they use, and eventually it kind of gets a bit complicated, and I don't want to be too boring about it, but regardless of your personal claims experience within your business or your home and all those sorts of things, we are seeing premiums trending up. And the reason why is insurers have to cover the costs of those losses that
and
are
that's
building.
an important one, and I like to, sorry to interrupt, but I like to jump in and give the key takeaway for the audience. And the key takeaway there is understand how insurance premiums work. It's like a pool, and we went through this in our house. We didn't flood. The water didn't even make it across the road, even though we're across the road from the river and we're on Oxlade Drive. And, the water didn't cross the river, but we're deemed to be in the flood zone because 90% of Oxlade Drive flooded, and the insurers pull it all together. So you need to understand that as a listener, that you can't adopt the attitude, I didn't get broken into, or I didn't flood. So it doesn't affect me. No, you're in a pool of the premium gets spread amongst you as well.
Yeah,
correct?
and look, and just to carry on from your point, I'm not personally in a flood zone, and my premium increase. Yeah. So, I'm definitely not in a flood zone. So, regardless, insurers do look at risk based on, if you're an Oxley, that does flood, and so they will factor that in. But insurers do look on sort of on a risk, individual risk basis. But we are seeing more of that general, no, we're getting this amount and we need to be getting this amount to continue to pay claims. And at the end of the day, that's what insurance is there for, to pay a claim. Yeah. So if they're not pulling that premium, the ability for the insurer to pay claims and remain trading and all those sorts of things starts to sort of dwindle. Not to sort of speak of New Zealand too much, but in New Zealand, we had a significant natural disaster event. Yep. Christchurch earthquakes.
Yes, of course.
And what we saw during that was insurers were unable to pay the cost of claims and had to be bailed out by the government.
They didn't have enough in the kitty.
That's exactly right. And so obviously to get insurance in an area such as Christchurch now is significantly more expensive. So that's what we are starting to see globally, that all those weather events that are unfortunately a result of, global warming, all that sort of thing occurring more frequently will inevitably continue to see premiums rising. Some risks, places like Lismore becoming uninsurable.
Yeah.
Or if you can get insurance, it will be very limited, no flood cover, those sorts of things.
Okay. So with that in mind then, because you would get asked this a lot, at what point do people look at self-insuring?
Well, unfortunately more often than we would like.
Yeah.
It really, insurance is about weighing up, or, if you choose to take insurance, you're weighing up what's the risk of this happening to me versus how much am I going to be paying for the, inevitable circumstance that it does happen. And while, as an insurance broker, I would encourage everyone to have insurance. So self-insurance is becoming more common. We're seeing people choose to forego particularly certain elements such as flood cover, because given those weather events, flood cover carries a significant portion of the premium nowadays. While some insurers still have it optional, some automatically include it and so on. So with underinsurance or choosing to forego insurance for certain sections, it's
a risk.
It is a significant risk, and particularly given how often these flood events, weather events, Cyclone Alfred, out of nowhere, those sort of things are happening, causing significant property damage. We're seeing an increase in theft crimes.
Yeah.
And then moving into sort of a different type of policy, something like a management liability, which covers, say, employment grievances and things. That's expensive, but choosing to forego that, particularly after COVID, we've seen that rise and increase in employment grievances as a result.
So what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, anybody that's asking the question, should I get business interruption insurance? Should I get grievance insurance, managers, directors insurance? I think that the case, what I'd be doing is getting a piece of paper and a pen, and I'd be writing the question at the top, and I'd be going, what's the worst possible thing that can happen?
That's exactly right.
And if, and if you, okay, business interruption, all right, I'm turning over 20,000 a week and I can afford not to turn that over for 6 months. Okay, maybe don't take it. But if you're relying on that income week in, week out, then I think you should be taking business interruption insurance. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that
fair
definitely
approach?
is. And look, and we're seeing increasing numbers of these sorts of claims. If your sort of premises or your content stock, anything like that is damaged by a physical event, a weather event, a storm, fire is a great example. Your business interruption policy is designed to keep the profit where it was and get you back to where you should be as a business. It also has benefits such as, you can have a temporary premises where you can move your business to, additional advertising costs. There's sort of it can be quite a complex cover, and that's why it's important to understand your risk, understand what can go wrong, what the loss is going to be to you. How long does your business take to get back on its feet? How long will your building take to repair? All those sorts of things can factor in, and that's why it's important to sort of sit with someone. Even if you don't have a broker, I would suggest pick up the phone and talk to your insurer. And they have all the information you could possibly need, and perhaps some guidance too on.
But again, it's the key takeaway is you need to be across your insurance policies.
That's definitely right.
You take Cyclone Alfred for example, and you go, right, the people that had business interruption insurance, they're not stressing and they're not worried. The ones that didn't have it, they're unfortunately, and what's it worth to you? Like, is it worth the blood pressure? Is it worth the bloody heart attack? Is it worth?
And just to point it out, it's relatively, if you've got your property damage cover, your building, your contents, so on, the business interruption tax on and is a relatively affordable premium compared to that. So really, for your peace of mind and knowing that you're going to have
investment.
Exactly. An essential cover. I would say it's an essential cover for all businesses, particularly those with, physical workplaces.
And no matter how small or large, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, we would have, large scale businesses that have huge business interruption policies to your average, tiny little hospitality.
And something people don't think about, Karla, and I heard about this happened in the US, where a factory caught fire. And it affected a group of shops that were 50 metres down the road.
That's exactly right.
And they weren't able to operate for 2 weeks just because there was a fire up the road. Now, the person who had the fire, and it was a big fire, they were fine because they were covered. And the poor shop owners down the road, half of them were told they didn't have business interruption. Yet, as a byproduct of what happened up the road, ironically, the person who had the fire and the interruption doesn't lose $1, and the person who didn't have the fire has got no insurance.
Yeah, and look, so obviously with a scenario like that, you can have physical damage occur, smoke damage and all those sorts of things. But if you don't, there's a trigger under the business interruption policy or a clause called prevention of access. So if the government or the powers that be, whoever it is, have ordered you not to go into your premises and you're not unable to go there and continue trading, that can be claimed for under a policy. But just making sure you're checking your coverage and scenarios fit and all that.
Correct. So again, key takeaway: proactive versus reactive. Because once you don't have the insurance, it's too late.
That's exactly right.
You've got to be proactive, and therefore you must be sitting down with a broker and go through your policy. And I think the same way we do it with you guys is sit down with the person, go through the must-haves, the nice-to-haves is the way we always talk about. What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? Break it all down, get comfortable with your worst case scenario, and then build the policy accordingly. Let's change speed. Let's talk about disclosures and pitfalls that people should look at in policies.
Yeah, look, and what we're seeing increasing numbers of is sort of non-disclosure of past claims and things like that. Given the premium market at the moment, we are seeing people changing insurers regularly, which is fine, and you're well obviously within your rights to do that, makes sense, so on. However, what we're seeing, I just had one the other day where a client had changed insurer and not disclosed a claim, and subsequently the following claim they had was declined. Because remember, insurers can see all of this history, and in the event that they find that out, you may find it harder to get insurance moving forward. So we are seeing sort of increasing numbers of that. Things like a vehicle where you have your vehicle got scratched on day 1 and on day 7 you crashed into another car and you're trying to claim both under one policy, one claim event. Things like that are occurring more regularly and they will be declined by insurers. So it's important to understand how a claim sort of scenario will work for all your various policies. But yeah,
And the advantage of having a broker, right?
That's
because
exactly
if in
right.
doubt, you pick up the phone, or you don't. This is not a push just for brokerage. You pick up the phone and ask your insurer.
That's right,
If
yeah.
your car gets scratched, and is it worth a claim or not? But get on the phone and ask the insurer,
Yeah.
or ask your broker, because, like you said, if down the track you have an accident and it's on the opposite side of the car, you can't get one fixed for the other. You
and
can't get the two
unfortunately,
for one.
insurers are quite clued in to those sort of things, and that can really impact you across all kinds of insurance products, your ability to get insurance, which, as we're seeing, is probably ever more needed.
So is that happening more and more?
We are.
Insurance companies are rejecting certain policies?
Yeah, interesting. If I can just share a story, I had a client just recently who had a property on Stradbroke Island, obviously interesting in itself given the Cyclone Alfred events, and they had not told the insurer that it was being used as a holiday rental. So when the insurer found out, they promptly cancelled the policy. So and we had to, quickly arrange insurance, which we did, and no problem. However, that's something to be aware of. If you're not disclosing the full activities of your business, or that your roof's not 100%, or it's got some damage and things like that, all factor into your insurance. So it's important to be really transparent with your broker, your insurer, answering all the questions as honestly and openly as you can. And if you're not sure, ask.
Yeah.
What do you want me to
Well, we went through that. We had to get a building report from the roof.
Yes.
As you know, before the new insurer would accept the claim.
That's right. And that's check things like maintenance. You're obviously not covered under insurance for wear and tear.
Yeah.
So it's designed for accidental loss or damage and weather events and things of that nature. So important to sort of understand what you can and can't claim for under insurance as well.
Yeah, very important. Okay, let's talk cafes.
Yes.
So let's go through the certain policies. The listeners, a lot of our audience are obviously business owners. A lot of them are cafe owners.
Yes.
Some of them are really tiny espresso bars with two people working in it. Some are massive operations.
Yes.
What are the different types of insurance that cafes should have?
Well, so we have touched on a few. So obviously your first one is property damage.
Yep.
So that would be things if you own your premises, if you lease it and you're doing a fit out is a huge one we see clients underinsuring for.
Or don't insure
Or
at
don't
all.
insure. And we just really want to stress that's your risk to insure. And you're
Some of
gonna be
those
out
fit
of
outs
pocket.
down there are in the millions of dollars.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're unfortunately going to be out of pocket for those expenses. Your stock, contents, so that's, tip your premises upside down, anything that falls out is other contents or stock essentially.
Yeah.
All those sorts of things. Business interruption, which we touched on. So for your cafes, you obviously need to be in person working every day. So if something happens to your premises or your items and you can't do that, you're going to be sort of out of profit significantly.
Yeah.
So that's something essential, particularly for a cafe.
Yep. So your fit out,
hospitality.
guys, your contents and equipment, and obviously your business interruption.
Yeah, and then we can sort of tack on from there. I did touch on this one as well. Public liability, so public and products liability, that can cover things like property damage you cause in the process of your business
But
activities.
you need that legally anyway in a
Yes,
cafe, right?
well, you
because you're
do.
serving food, you're serving drinks.
and your personal injury. So if customer one comes into your premises and trips and falls and holds you liable,
Yes.
if you don't have that policy in place, you're going to find yourself.
And
in
what's the
real hurt.
common now? It used to be 10 million. I see most
So-
people are doing 20 million.
Yeah, so we are seeing, obviously, Australia can be quite litigious. So we're seeing those sort of amounts increasing significantly, where we would be recommending at minimum 20 million.
Yeah, liability.
yeah.
When years ago it was 5 or 10.
That's right,
And it's
certainly.
now, and I said this probably 15 years ago, we're becoming more like America. We want to litigate everything.
Yeah.
So of course with that comes a cost. And so you're hearing that cafe owners or any small businesses or most businesses, obviously if you own the building insurance, if you don't own the building, or even if you do own the building, the next one is your fit out, making sure that your fit out is compensated for in case there's smoke damage, water damage, fire damage, all of that stuff. And then you've got contents and equipment, making sure that that's there and keeping a register of all the equipment in your cafe or in your restaurant or on
And
your
your stock
premises
can be
and your
very
stock.
helpful.
And then you've obviously got business interruption and public liability.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, so we sort of did touch on this also. Management liability is something we are seeing a lot of claims for under this policy, particularly sort of two things to point out. Under this policy, you have several different sections of cover. One of those is statutory liability. So that will cover you for unintentional breaches of certain government acts, things like health and safety at work, pollution. You're dealing with, obviously, food and things of that nature. So it's important to have that sort of section of cover. In addition, you've got something called employment practices liability. So particularly given COVID, we touched on sort of a bit earlier, that we're seeing an increasing number of employees becoming more aware of their rights. I think we've had some reform to the Fair Work Act just recently.
Yep. In March, there's reforms everywhere. The current government, which was the last government, 28 different reforms in 3 years, and there's more coming.
Yes.
But the March one, I think it was the latest one to the sexual harassment.
Well, that's right. So that's an important thing to understand under that sort of cover. So employment practices can be, bullying, sexual harassment, all those sorts of things. It can also be unfair dismissal or wrongful termination. So, if you're going to be making someone redundant and something goes wrong in that process, that policy can, depending on the circumstances, have some support, defence costs, all those sorts of things. So that's quickly becoming a key policy. We would recommend that to all café, hospitality type venues, and we do have many clients that run those operations that have that policy and have had particularly the employment claims brought against them.
Yeah, the employment one's a big one, and I said that we would start to talk about the future. That is a big one in the future.
Yeah, and just with the nature of employment in cafes and hospitality venues, unfortunately you do have sort of a balance of full-time and casual, and you can see issues arising from that.
Yeah. And you've heard it first. IR and HR, we've been talking a lot about it. One of our latest ones we released a couple of months ago was Timmy Dye from HR Cartel, and we talked about where have we come from in IR and HR, where are we, and where are we going? And he explained it really well. And for listeners, I suggest you listen to Tim's podcast that he did with myself, and then I suggest you get in touch with Stellar Insurance Brokers and look at the insuring against employees and everything that comes with it, because it is just crazy.
And officers and things like that, for claims brought against one of your directors and so on. So it is important to understand that people are becoming more aware of their rights, and that does have an impact on insurance and on your business, so that those sort of policies can really help.
100%. Now, once you've got them all in order, tell me, and again, for the listeners thinking, well, that's a lot of money, I can't afford it. You've got to be comfortable with your worst case scenario. You've got to think proactively, because unfortunately, one of our great podcasts in the past has been Hill House Lawyers, and we talked about proactive approach to legals is a lot cheaper than a reactive approach. Unfortunately, with insurance, if you're not proactive, there is no reactive.
That's sadly no.
Once the event happens, you're finished, you're done.
Yeah.
So, you have a look at everything that could possibly happen. Be comfortable with your worst case scenario, and then insure yourself against the stuff that you are not going to be comfortable if the worst thing happens. If you listen to nothing else today, listen to that template there. Insure everything that you are not comfortable in possibly losing.
Yeah, look, and I think a good sort of place to start with that is think of particular scenarios that, perhaps a friend or someone has experienced within their business or home and all those sorts of things. And am I covered for that? Might be a really good place to start.
A good time to share some stories. Karla, tell us some stories of where people weren't covered and they should have been covered.
Well, speaking of fit outs, I did sort of have an interesting claim. It wasn't New Zealand, but albeit same rules apply here. Yeah. And a client had a garage installation business unrelated to hospitality, and they had a significant fit out. I think it was 50,000, something like that, within the premises that they chose not to insure. And unfortunately for them, so we'd obviously advised you need to have insurance for that, and what the outcome could be. They had a significant weather event. Roof and obviously the resultant damage and all that sort of thing, and they were not insured. So that's probably one where we would say you really need to understand if you're adding, partition walls or anything like that, that's your risk to insure, and you need to be making sure you're reviewing that regularly. If you're making changes to your policies, please make sure you reach out to your insurer, make sure you're covered.
Yeah. What about the cars? We talked about it before we started recording. The cars and keys in cars and the loopholes that these that some of these insurers use to get out and around of. So let's explore that one.
So I did see
all of those of you that have got your cars in your garage, like me, until I was told many years ago, do not leave the keys in the car.
No.
Especially my cars, because I'm happy for them to take them and burn them and blow them up. I certainly don't want them back crash because I don't want to get them fixed.
Yeah.
But don't leave the keys in your car was the message I was given many years ago.
So don't do that. So we just saw a claim sort of on the news, actually, so many of you may have seen it, where a client had, or a customer had left their keys in the centre console and subsequently closed the garage, happy days, gone to bed, and someone had broken through their garage and the keys in the car, driven off with the car. And unfortunately, that claim was declined. So while I guess the keys were secure, weren't they, within the garage?
Yeah.
You'd left your car unlocked with your keys in them, and
that's
that's
because of a
breach of your
loophole.
policy.
That's a breach in the policy, right?
It's important to read your policy coverage, understand, like I was saying earlier, understand what you can and can't claim for. And, if you sort of put insurance to the side, what would a reasonable person do? I wouldn't expect a reasonable person to leave the keys in the car and expect something not to happen, regardless if it's in your garage, particularly seeing the increase in theft claims and all that sort of thing.
And that's what we mean. Where insurance is now is where it's come from. You've got to be a lot more vigilant. There's a lot more things that happen, and it all comes back to that pooling of funds. There's a lot more claims. There's a lot more crime. There's a lot more weather events. There's a lot more ambiguity. There's a lot more risk. And with that comes more claims, and with more claims comes more money needs to go into the pool, and away we go. But the one thing I do want to ask you, why is it mandatory? And you might not have the answer to this because a few people haven't, but why is it mandatory to have flood cover if you want to opt out of flood cover? And I'll give you an example. Our Gold Coast apartment, which you guys look at, is 3 stories up. Mm-hmm. And I know you have to have flood cover for your contents. Well, hang on a minute. Before I flood, the whole Gold Coast is underwater, and no one will get paid because insurance companies won't be able to afford to pay everybody. Yes. But yet I have to have flood cover. The simplistic view is that's just a money grab.
Yeah. Well, look, I actually have a client that's in the Phoenician in Broadbeach.
Well, they're on the 25th floor?
Yeah, something like that. They're really high up and they have flood cover. So we're seeing a shift from now it's automatically built into policies, particularly your domestic policies. With some of your commercial, your business premises, you can opt out or sometimes it won't be included depending on the zone. So we are seeing that shift, but particularly given that it's like we discussed earlier, a result of those weather events, obviously people saying, I didn't know I wasn't insured for flood, and having, a lot to say in regard to that, has seen this sort of reform sweep through. So those scenarios, those weather events, again, do have a significant impact.
And of course, we understand, and listeners need to understand, it's a commercial business, right? And because there have been so many payouts in the last 10 years, Cortland, especially in Brisbane with the weather events, there's been 3 major weather events in 10 years. Well, just over 10 years. The pool of money, they've got to build their kitties back up. Now, unfortunately, as we know, when things go up, they don't normally come down. So, we're still paying for water rates even when there's floods. I mean, water rates came in to try and slow down the use of consumption of water. Well, we've got that much water, it's not funny, and we're still paying water rates. But I'm not going to go on my rant, Lord Mayor, for you to listen and maybe do something about it. But that's another discussion. Tell me, how often should a small business review or update their insurance policy? At
least annually. So you should be sitting down, with your business partners, with your insurer, a full review. If you decide you're going to start brewing a new type of drink that involves different products and all that sort of thing, that has additional risk attached to it. Perhaps if it's something different to what you normally do.
Well, a lot of people start off serving coffee and don't add food, and then all of a sudden they add a kitchen. Have you insured the kitchen? Have you insured for public liability in terms of food? Because
understanding a kitchen increases your risk significantly with the fire ignition sources. So those are the sort of questions you need to be sort of reviewing annually. However, if you're making changes to what you're doing throughout the year, if I, like we use that example, if I am a coffee roaster and I decide I'm going to have, a cafe premises open and start selling food and all those sorts of things, that's going to have a significant impact on your liability, let alone your assets and all those sorts of things. So it increases your risk of something going wrong when you start adding more elements. It's important when you're making a change to your business, you're purchasing new equipment, you might be adding more to your fit out, doing something additional, purchasing new vehicles, that you get that insured, or at least discuss with your insurer, broker, so on, what the additional risk is attaching to that.
Yeah, makes sense. Great point. So let's segue and a good one to finish off on before we summarise, claims. So what are some of the most common reasons insurance claims are denied? You said before, obviously, a major one is non-disclosure.
Yeah, so non-disclosure. Another one, not being able to prove your loss. I just had one very recently for stock lost, and the client was unable to prove the stock, so they weren't keeping correct records and all that sort of thing. So if you're shipping things around, particularly doing a transit from one location to another, and you're not keeping inventory of those sorts of things, that can be an issue. If you're not being able to prove that. Another one is not paying your premium. If you haven't paid your premium and you have a claim, there's going to be a significant delay. So you need to get that premium paid promptly to ensure if you have a claim on day one, it can go nice and smooth through instead of us chasing you for premium.
Yeah. And that's the other advantage of having a broker, I noticed, because I was freaking out. Our house policy was coming to an end, but because I'm with the broker, you guys had already automatically extended, and there was no hurry in paying the bill because I kept asking for the bill because I don't like owing money. That's why I'm not a runner, because people that run owe people money. And I just couldn't, and I just thought, geez, this is pretty easy, because I mean, normally if you haven't paid straight away, your claim's done, and it would be, right, if you're dealing with the insurance company.
It can be. Some insurers have different conditions that they'll apply. With a broker, we have extended credit terms, so if you want to pay within 30 days, that's fine. If you start getting towards 60 days, we'll start sending you some follow-ups, but we'd never cancel a policy or anything like that without first letting you know. Yeah,
and that's the advantage of obviously having a broker, right?
Yeah, look, and another common claim pitfall we see is not being able to provide enough documentation. So depending on what it is, if you have something...
So take photos of stuff, take videos. That used to be the common thing.
Photos, videos. Ago. Sounds a bit silly, but what I do as an insurance broker, when we moved into our home, I walked around and videoed all my stuff in the house. I've got one record of it. It's all there. I can prove I had it, can prove I had my ring on my finger and all those sorts of things. It's important to keep adequate records, document receipts.
Key takeaway there, listeners, keep records, get even in your cafe, even your restaurants, in your business, the computers and all this sort of stuff. Walk around and do a video log of everything you've got, and have as much proof and documentation, because this all, which segues beautifully to my next question, tell me, what can they do to ensure a smooth claims process?
Yeah, provide everything necessary, so that can be photographs, receipts, any type of proof of purchase, repair quotes, all those sorts of things can really, if you just go, here's my claim form, here's what's happened, here's the photo evidence.
CCTV, people underestimate. I talk about CCTV is great for occupational health and safety. Oh, I slipped over. Well, no, you didn't. Here it is. It's great for that, proving what's obviously in the premises, because you've got video of it. So CCTV is a good one. Obviously, paper documentation, receipts, because not everyone keeps all the receipts.
Inventories, like a list, even on your computer, a physical list. You've typed it in of you've purchased this stock and so on and so forth. All those things can really help speed along the claim process. Where delays happen with claims can be the insurers wanting to know, well, give us more description on the damage, or give us a bit more information about the event that's occurred. So if you can provide a full picture of what's happened, you'll find the claim progresses quite smoothly, so long as it's something, relatively straightforward.
And it's technology. What sort of influence has technology had on insurance?
Significant. So very significant. So there's sort of pros and cons. One thing that we are seeing is insurers are using technology to be able to look at risks on a more individual basis. They could go look at your roof on a map and have a detailed view, a current, up-to-date, all those sorts of things. Our claims manager recently attended a summit in Sydney, so insurers have advised they're going to be using technology more in how they rate risks.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, so that's sort of one element of it. The other element is, with everyone having access to technology, there's a lot of online insurers.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, you don't know what you're getting. You don't always know, particularly if you're the layman. You don't know, and you're not expected to. But we are seeing that. We're seeing clients who may have business with a direct insurer. Someone say, I could go jump on the internet and get a quote. We're seeing a lot of coverage differences there. It's meant to be quick. It's meant to be easy, but it's not always right.
Right. Yeah, of course. And what about cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is becoming a huge risk, and we're seeing a big uptick in the number of cyber events, but also the number of cyber policies written, which is really good to sort of coincide. But, hackers and all those sorts of things, they have the ability to just enter your business without you knowing. We're seeing a lot of claims for intercepted invoices.
We went through that, our fit-out guy in 2021. It was from their end, not our end, luckily, because we were not insured. They were. There was an intercepted invoice within 5 seconds of the invoice being sent. We got an email saying, sorry, and it looked identical. The last 3 digits of the bank account are these. We've typed the wrong error in, and it was just ridiculous, right? $71,000. Lucky it was on the other person's end, the fit-out end, that they intercepted, and they were insured.
Yeah, look, and regardless of your insurance, whether you have insurance in place or not for those, there are things you can do. I would be physically calling that
which is what we do now.
Yep. And confirming that, and triple confirming things before you're making payments or accepting, certain emails. If you're not sure, it's better to double verify.
Good takeaway there, Karla, to make sure that, anyone you're paying for the first time in your business or even at home, call and verify the details. Because I always say the next war is not, don't ask me why they want to build submarines, but there's another one. Thank you, Prime Minister.
And we don't do insurance on those.
But the next war is not coming where a submarine's going to solve the problem. It'll be, it'll be something like a COVID again, but obviously, unfortunately, to the next level, or it'll be cybersecurity. It's submarines aren't going to fix any of that problem. Again, Prime Minister, if you're listening, waste of money. But it really is important, and that's where the business interruption comes, right? The business interruption in terms of the cyber.
So cyber policies will have a business interruption attached to those cyber events under a cyber policy.
Just for cyber?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've got to make sure, and it was a loaded question, because a lot of people will go, oh, but I've got business interruption, and I had a cyber event and that's interrupted. No. That's normally
So under your cyber policy, you have cover for cyber theft, you have cover for that business interruption sort of on-flow effect. So it is important, particularly if that forms a large portion of your business, you're kind of exposing yourself additionally to those risks, which are occurring all the time. So if you're not going to do the insurance, which I would recommend you do, but if you're not, then taking those steps to ensure, everything's kept nice and buttoned down.
Yeah. So you heard it first, and the whole thing about cybersecurity is not it won't happen to me, it's when will it happen to me. You can go out there and speak to anyone right now. Somebody will know somebody who knows somebody that has been affected by cybersecurity. Yes. And unfortunately, with AI and all the other technology, I always say it's like a scalpel. Surgeon uses a scalpel for good. A bad person with bad intentions uses a scalpel for bad. AI is going to be identical. It's no different. Those phone calls you get when people are waiting for you to talk as much as you can and they don't respond, there's a reason behind that. So cyber insurance is something that I really urge everybody, no matter how small or big you are in a business, but something that you need to have a look at and be covered for.
Yeah. And look, just to touch on that, just a bit further. So cyber insurers often perform tests on your website. So regardless of whether you purchase a policy, if you approach a cyber insurer, they can do that for free and see how easy it is. Yeah, certain insurers, certainly the ones we use, can do that as a service. There you go.
So if you want to have a big look at, get a hold of the guys at Stellar Insurance and they can tee that up and have your thing tested. I mean, we use a great IT company which obviously tests our team all the time. They keep bugging me to do the test, and and moving things off your server to the cloud and stuff like that. So most of the attacks are on servers, but this is all the stuff that insurance companies will talk to you about and know about, and it's not as expensive as people think.
No, and look, cyber's relatively new. Yes. It has been around, but it's new, but it is emerging. So we're seeing a lot of new insurers into that space. And interesting enough, no two products are exactly the same. So it's really getting that tailored to what you're doing, what your exposure is. If you're a client that's sending hundreds of invoices a week, obviously you need cover for that invoice.
Or keeping people's data is a big one. Yes. If you're keeping people's license details, if you're keeping people's date of births, all the major important copies of passports and IDs, and you've got that on your server, you need, there needs to be a duty of care, and you need to be insured because that's what they're chasing.
Yeah, and look, there's obviously different limits you can get within that policy, but it is relatively affordable, particularly given the cover it provides or can provide a business.
And again, proactive, because you can't be reactive in insurance. You can't insure later. So last question for you. Any emerging trends we need to be across?
Yeah, so I sort of just touched on it. We are seeing a lot more entrants into the insurance market. So underwriting agencies, we would call them. But what that does is sort of muddies up. Back in the day, I used to have, say, 5 insurers, and you'd know this insurer offers this and that. Now we're seeing a lot more entrants. And while that does mean more competitive premiums, it can mean significant variations in cover. So when you're changing insurer, if you get a quote from another insurer, it's really, competitive. It's important to be aware. Are you cutting out cover? So that's one trend we're seeing, a lot more entrants into the market, pushing premiums into a bit of a more competitive space. Yeah. Still trending upwards, but you'll have a bit more, options in the market.
Yeah.
Obviously,
we know, supply and demand.
Yeah, well, and we touched on weather events, so that will continue to be a trend, trending upwards. It's been a trend for a while now, continue to remain on the front of mind. We did also touch on cyber. That's another trend we're seeing, an influx in cyber events, influx in cyber policies taken up, great policy responses there. So important to assess that risk for your own business.
Karla, you've been amazing. It's Karla Vosloo from Stellar Insurance Brokers. I told you insurance might not be sexy, but it is important. And you would no doubt by the end of this podcast be a lot smarter in this space than what you were when you first started listening. I've learned a lot today. I thank you. I thank for the great work that you guys do in the whole industry of insurance. And as I said, it's going to be more and more common, people exploring and doing a lot more work in the insurance space. As you know, prices are going up. You need to make sure you're getting the best ROI on your policies. You need to make sure that you're working with people that know what they're doing, people that have been there and done that. And that's what we do at the Coffee Commune, is we bring people, experts in their field, we bring the community together and help them accelerate their potential. So until next time, you've been listening to Phillip Di Bella, and I thank you for the time that you take to follow our show, and I wish you greatness, and I want you to be better tomorrow than what you are today. Till next time, take care. That's a wrap for today. Keep listening for more episodes of Been There and Done That. The Coffee Commune is here to help accelerate your potential. We want you to be better tomorrow than today. Until next time, you've been listening to Phillip Di Bella. I'm the founder and managing director of the Coffee Commune, a place where the coffee community comes to collaborate.